Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Archmagus hero class. I was gone about 2 weeks ago when the hero class ended up getting released, but I finally got it leveled and figured it'd be a good time to go show it, because the main purpose of this hero class is for Purple Guild War Day. So, as far as this hero class is concerned, it is set up very similarly to that of Corsair, in that it has a final trait that ends up giving it a +2 to a color, in this case purple, as well as having a third +1 off of its perks itself once it reaches level 70, meaning it can reach +3 purple mana, which is the highest amount of purple that you'll ever be able to get for one single troop. On top of that, it also has Arcane, so you'll be able to constantly keep accumulating magic every single time you cast, and you'll be doing a lot more casts, being able to get +3 or +2 purple. And obviously this would mostly be used in heavily purple teams, or even pure purple teams, for things like Purple Guild War, as you'd gain a lot more benefit from taking anything with that mana. So any kind of purple mana generators, or any team that needs 2, 3, or 4 heavy purples will end up working out pretty decently for. As far as what the troop actually counts as, it is a Silverglade Mystic. Comes with a pretty interesting weapon as well. It's basically an Essence of Evil, but the inverse of it. It gives all positive stats effects instead of all negative stats effects, and then explodes a bunch of gem of their mana color. So you'll be able to use this for a bunch of mana accumulation while basically making a really strong tank. You would mostly only want to cast this on first slot. There'd be a few other situations, but the main reason you'd always do it on first slot is Bless would get rid of things like Entangle or Silence and other things off your first slot. You'd give it Enrage, you give it Enchant, you'll give it Burial, you'll give it Reflect. It's a lot of things that will end up being mostly beneficial to your first slot, or at least fully utilized by something like your first slot. And as more positive stats effects come into the game, this is going to become even stronger over time, since it will do every single stats effect regardless of how many more we get into the future. So it is only going to get stronger, not weaker. I still feel like Essence of Evil is overall a bit better than this weapon. However, it has the big difference of being purple, of course, rather than green, so that gives it slightly different instances. It's also really good at keeping things like Web Spin or another very useful first slots alive if you don't have other options to be able to do so. And of course, this is a pretty cheap option to be able to get, since all you have to do is complete out the Silverglade questline, get 250 wins on the hero class, and then you have this weapon. And you don't necessarily have to run this weapon with this hero class itself, though it does work pretty good since you already have the +2 purple it needs in order to ideally 2-turn the weapon with all the extra mana that you end up getting. As far as its trait setup, you mostly just go for a little bit of extra armor onto your purples, since you're most likely going to be using multiple purples on your team, potentially even pure purples, so you'd gain a bit more benefit from that. Not much of a benefit off of its next position. You can get some magic if you use it in last, which occasionally you will, or you can end up stealing 1 life whenever you take purple. This of course can backfire if they have a trait that triggers whenever they take life damage. However, this is still going to be decent, as you're obviously going to be taking a lot of purple in most teams that this hero class is going to be used in. For the next one, you're either going to want to go 20% spell reduction or disease. Whichever one you feel like you need more in a given situation is which one you'd go for. I'd personally say disease is generally the better option, just because they both kind of serve the same purpose in that they're trying to deny out the enemy's abilities, and with this will only work against things that only do cast damage, whereas this will also work against things that do skull damage and anything off a cast, since you'll be able to go and lower down their mana accumulation, so they won't be able to use any ability, whereas this only works against magic dealing abilities. Other than that, half mana start, it does have a natural half mana start, so you can simply just have that and not need to worry about anything else. So that's pretty much the only one you'd ever run on there, since you're really not ever really going to be using Brownstorm with it, and the summon's pretty useless. On the next tree, you're most likely either going to use the Artifact for 4 extra magic on Artifact, or you're going to use the Doomstorm. Doomstorm can be pretty hit or miss, but it's going to be nice with explosions. So if you're using a really heavy purple team that does have some amount of explosion on it, or board clear, you will be able to go and destroy all the extra Doom Skulls you create in order to clear out the board. This also synergizes pretty decently with its next perk. Instead of going for a third +1 purple, which you can go, you can instead go for Explosion, and this one, Explosion, can synergize with the Doomstorm in order to clear quite a bit of board simply by taking a single extra turn off the board. Since you'll take the extra turn, the Explosion will go explode, and any Doom Skulls they end up triggering with it will all chain together, and you'll end up getting a lot of mana from a single extra turn. And this is one of the hero classes that you don't necessarily need to get to level 100. However, if you are going to go level 100, the best bonus for is most likely going to be the Elemental one, where all Elementals gain 1 magic whenever ally casts a spell. Not sure how many instances you would actually use an Elemental team with this hero class. The hero class itself does not count as Elemental. Unfortunately, we still don't have an Elemental hero class, but you'll still be able to feed other elementals, of course, with this benefit. And the only other one that you may consider, just because it does technically count as a mystic, is it does gain 2 life and 2 magic whenever an enemy dies. However, while this will apply to itself, there aren't too many good synergies with a pure Mystic team, so you're more likely, if you're going to bother getting this to 100, use the Elemental one rather than the Mystic one, even though it itself counts as a Mystic, oddly enough. But that's all the perks for it. Let's go and actually show some teams. It is definitely an option worth considering. Also, I can't not take tribute, but it's an option definitely worth considering. We'll start from the bottom and work our way up. We're going to be showing 3 teams. First one is the only non-pure purple one, in which case we're going to be using it with Zugoff. Zugoff, of course, is the highest purple mana cost troop in the game, and for that reason, we'll be able to go and feed it a lot more mana. Of course, you don't have to necessarily use in pure purple, as long as you're using at least 2 purples on your team that use a decent amount of purple. It'll still serve its full purpose. So we're going to be running it down that route. We're also going to be running it with a pretty decent skull-related first slot, and the main reason for this is, as I mentioned earlier, the mirror is going to be really good when targeted onto a offensive first slot option. So things like Umanif, things like Web Spinner, pretty much anything that's going to be getting a multiplier on skulls is a decent option to consider for your first slot with it. So right off the bat, we're going to go and convert that out. You might notice right now we are frozen on first slot, but we don't need to worry because one of the stats effects that exists, of course, is Bless. And assuming you're not cursed, Bless will get rid of all negative stats effects. So there we go. We just got rid of Frozen. We got Barrier on it. We got Reflect. We got a lot of things going for it. Unfortunately, it almost just died immediately. Gosh. Wow, I got so much value right there. Well then, looks like we're going to have one of the instant Doom Skull destructions. That was a bit beyond our control, though that's one of the big downsides of having Doomstorm, of course, or any skull-related storm, is if the enemy gets advantage first, you're probably dead, especially in the instance of Doomstorm. But we'll go for this first. Oh, I probably should have converted immediately. We actually had a pretty good board there, but we'll go for that. Kind of same premise as the previous battle. You can see we are currently entangled on first slot, but we don't need to worry about that because, boom, entangles off, and we just gave it enrage, so it will do 1.5 time damage and hit through traits on its next skull poke that it does. So unfortunately, we don't have alignment here, so we're probably going to just pass and take some mana. I guess we'll just take a purple off the top. Trying to get another essence. See if we get a skull here. Let's see. We could do that skull poke. We also have our ability if we want to go for it. Let's see. I think we need a skull poke before we can actually secure it a kill. The only issue with taking the skull is it is going to give him an extra turn. Well, then again, he's almost guaranteed going to be getting an extra turn here. So since we probably don't have the Graveseer as a cast, I guess we are going to have to give this to him, unfortunately. So we'll do that. He's going to get a decent cast here. Hopefully he does not secure it a kill. And it looks like we don't, or he doesn't because of the agile there, so that ends up working out pretty nicely. So, again, we do not have the Graveseer, unfortunately, but we can go for the instant kill, get that out, get a little bit of skull spam on it, take the skull into skull. We'll still have the Graveseer as follow-up as well, and still don't have an option for it, unfortunately. At this point, it might just be better to go mirror and just start getting Zugoffs up. Do this on hero to go get it tanked. We can also go try giving enchant to our last slot there, but we did end up getting enough mana. We just go for instant kill. And almost all the way there. Just need to get him another poke. And actually, it looks like 2 pokes. The enrage will not be enough to cover it all the way. We do have Graveseer, so I can actually just go for that. Hopefully get our full mana, and we do. And then we just instant kill it. So that's pretty much how that works out. As far as Mirror Good, as I mentioned, I still feel like Essence of Evil is the better option. But there are situations where you can get away with it. Skull Spam seems to not be one of the things you want to use against it, though, apparently. Because at least Essence of Evil has the ability to deny out one of them. Whereas you can't really do that with the Mirror. Mirror, all positive stats effects, for the most part, aren't particularly useful against Skull Spam, because Barrier isn't really going to get you that far, and Reflect can do a little bit, but it's not going to be enough to just instant kill them out. So here's probably one of my favorite teams, honestly, with the new hero class, and that is running it with Shabanu Vespera. Vespera, of course, was an option that we got, what, 2 mythics ago? Relatively recent, last month, and she is still pretty good. Decent Guild War option. Did end up losing some with her yesterday, but overall I do feel like she's pretty good value. And from what I've been testing so far, it almost seems like she's best on Purple Day now, oddly enough, even though her summon isn't as good for Purple. The kind of teams that she can be used with is. So basically what we're running here is Thrall. Thrall is a pretty interesting common in that it's one of the best commons in the entire game. It has a +1 Purple Link, and for only 6 mana cost, it can destroy more than half the board. This is pretty relevant because an exploder that explodes the entire board is only getting about 32 gems worth of value because it only gives 50%. Whereas if you're destroying more than 32 gems on the board, you're basically getting more mana accumulation than a full board clear off of explosion. So something like Gorgotha. This is basically a Gorgotha for 6 mana cost, essentially, and even less since you have the purple. And this purple into the other purple allows you to set explosion without needing to set additional purple. So you don't have to go the the 7th perk, or the level 70 perk, you don't have to set that to a +1 purple because you have +2 purple here and a +1 purple off of him, meaning you have all the purples you need to take a single purple without even surging in order to get him to full mana, meaning you basically 2-turn, 1 turn taking mana and then the other turn grabbing his ability, or, casting his ability. And you're already set on mana. Then you just keep spamming it on the weapon. You can end up using a Doomed Scythe. Any full AoE purple Scythe would also work, but Doomed Scythe, of course, is the better option since we can actually use it for alignment. So basically what we want to do is keep casting Skeleton over and over again until we get alignment on Skulls. So we're just going to keep repeating this, keep buffing our hero, and keep trying to get alignment into yellow to Doom Skull. And once we have alignment on yellow to Doom Skull, we can then go cast Doomed Blade without actually wasting our turn. And we can keep casting Skeleton with never dropping our turn as well, since we can just keep getting it for his automatic extra turn that he has. So we basically just keep cycling the board until we get the yellows next to Skulls, keep poking them ever so slightly, and rinse and repeat until we win. It's basically the whole game plan here. Unfortunately, we're not really getting lucky with alignment here. We're getting the loop going, and obviously, as you can see, it can basically infinite loop. It's not a true infinite, but it goes pretty hard to the point that it's one of those infinite loops that isn't actually infinite, but it loops long enough that you pretty much win before it stops looping, and that's pretty much the type of loop that it is. So here we finally got alignment. Gosh, that took way longer than normal, but of course that allows you to cast Doomed Blade without actually wasting your turn, which gives a full AoE plus a bunch of Doom Skulls and a bunch of board clear. And yeah, personally, my favorite team out of every single team to use with this new hero class, so definitely worth considering. And it's fully Purple Guild War compatible as well, which is kind of interesting. Haven't tested it for Purple Guild War yet, but I will be later today to see how it goes. But from what I've seen so far, it's pretty solid. It does have a little bit of struggle with freeze, but most teams that are pure color do struggle with freeze, since obviously one freeze on one of those colors, and you're frozen on all of it. So here's a life and death team. Here's something you might end up seeing in a Guild War battle, actually. Really annoying team to have to deal with, but we'll be running a something that used to be ran a little bit in the past. And Elemaugrim and Furnace team, I don't feel like they're ran too much these days, and I still feel like the Vespera option is a little bit better, but it is an interesting option. It's one of the few things that Elemaugrim does get used for, of course, if you are going to use it, is Purple Guild War Day. And now that we have basically a Mountain Crusher that can be used on Purple Guild War Day, that opens up some options, since prior we didn't really have a Mountain Crusher-like weapon for this day. Unfortunately, we do need to go get an extra turn, so I can't just go yet. Well, then again, we probably can. There's enough purple that we should land an extra turn. And basically, the whole premise of Elemaugrim is very similar to how a web spinner used to be used before it got triple damage on Skulls, is you basically just keep looping over and over again on your ability and just never lose your turn. Well, not never lose your turn, but, it gets quite a few hits in before it ever would drop its turn. And then you can just use Infernus to clean up or board clear, and you also have Leprechaun as mana accumulation. And of course you have the Mirror of Good, which you can use to keep things alive and for mana accumulation. So it can end up working out decently. This one's a little bit more immune to freeze, since of course you can get rid of freeze with the Mirror. However, you can only do it one troop at a time. However, if it's a troop that's not really going to be casting as much, it's going to have Bless for its entire duration until it casts or takes Skull. So it will be able to hold that Blessed and that immune to freeze for a little bit longer than something like a single Cleanse would end up doing. But anyways, that is the new Archmagus hero class. It's definitely above the better half. It's probably even better than Core Zero overall. Obviously going to be a major Purple Guild War Day, and any kind of teams that are very focused on purple, it's probably going to be used often for. It's also a nice hero class in that you don't necessarily need to get to 100. It gains most of its benefit by the time you reach 70. However, you do want to get it to 70, as the explosion or the third extra purple is pretty beneficial to its overall value. But yeah, definitely a hero class I would say, at least if nothing else, get the weapon for. The Mirror of Good is a very good option to have. I still personally feel like it's weaker than Essence of Evil, which you get from Plague Lord hero class, but it's still a great option to have, great utility, and it's a good support option for keeping troops alive. But anyways, that's the new hero class. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I will catch all of you guys later, and have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you so much for watching.